If you've ever thought about New Haven style pizza, maybe you've thought, why do they call it a beets? Or you've wondered, how do you make it at home? Or better yet, how do you make it in an uni? Well, this episode is for you. Thanks for tuning in to the first part of our two-part series with Frank Zabski. It is an absolute pleasure to sit down with this pizza legend and hear what he has to say. Welcome to the What's Good Dough podcast. I'm your host, Idriff. On this show, we talk to the pizza community, including the innovators, the risk takers, and the game changers who are pushing the boundaries of pizza. Whether you're a seasoned pizza business owner or you're just starting out on your journey, we've got something for you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And remember to always ask, what's good dough? But first, let me make a big shout out to our sponsors. Uni Pizza Ovens is the world's leading pizza oven manufacturer that allows you to make truly great pizza at home. It heats up to 950 degrees Fahrenheit in just around 20 minutes, the perfect temperature to make amazing Neapolitan style pizza. I also like to make other styles of pizza with it too, like Sicilians, Romans, and New York. Suitable for both home cooks and professional pizza chefs, Uni Pizza Ovens are the perfect addition to any kitchen and will help you make the best pizza you've ever tasted. Don't settle for anything less than great pizza. Choose Uni Pizza Ovens. Cordo is the #1 olive oil among top pizza chefs, known for its exceptional quality and freshness. The company is motivated by innovation and is dedicated to transparency and quality. Ever since I started using Cordo olive oil in my dough and on top of my pizzas, the flavors are amazing and I am amazed each time I use it. The flavor profile you get with Cordo olive oil is fresh olive oil, and that is unlike any other olive oil you've ever tasted. If you want to experience the difference, order yours today. And if you want to support the show, use my affiliate link in the show's description below. Thank you for listening. And with that, let's get back to the episode. Welcome back to the show, everybody. I have with me today Frank Zabski. How's it going? Welcome.
Good, sir. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to have you on. You're my first guest on the show who's going to talk to me about New Haven style pizza. I'll let you tell the listeners what it is. But first, I want to ask you, there is one question that I always ask. There's no right or wrong answer. What's good dough?
What's good dough? I knew this was one question that was coming, and I think I have a pretty good answer, or at least my answer.
What is it?
So my answer is it's relative. The one thing that I figured out quickly is that when you say pizza to people, there's the people who kind of know probably 20, 30 different styles of pizza. Mm-hmm. And then there's the people that just think pizza's all the same. So my answer would be, I'm a New Haven guy. My wheelhouse is New Haven style pizza, and we actually call it ah-beetz. So it's A-P-I-Z-Z-A, and that's how it's spelled, and it's pronounced ah-beetz. From a completely biased perspective, I would say that the New Haven style dough, which basically is water, salt, yeast, bread, flour, it's so easy. But the thing that kind of separates New Haven is that most of our pizza is made with bread flour, as opposed to 00 or all-purpose. And there's several different percentages of bread flour, but mostly all trumps. Nothing to do with our ex-president.
Can you give me and the audience a brief primer? Why is it called ah-beetz?
The term or the word ah-beetz came from, there was a bunch of Italian immigrants that came over from the Campania region, which is like in the middle of the boot. They came over mid to late 1800s into early 1900s to the United States. They didn't have a lot of work over there. There was a lot of political issues, and we had the Industrial Revolution, especially on the East Coast. I know you're not on the East Coast, but on the East Coast, we had a thriving factory force, so to speak. So one of the big factories that was in New Haven, Connecticut, which is a port town like Boston and the 5 boroughs of Manhattan and Manhattan itself, they had a big company called Sergeant Locke, which is now Assa Abloy. Without getting too far off, Italian immigrants came over, Ellis Island, New Haven, one of the port towns, and they started working in the factories. But what they brought over with them was their love and passion for Neapolitan pizza, which is what they used to eat and make over in Italy.
Mhm.
And what a lot of people don't know is that, prior to late 1800s, 1900s, there was no pizza in the United States, period. What a lot of people also don't know is that there weren't a lot of restaurants. Back in the day, really not until after World War II, was there a lot of families that had discretionary income. So there were places that you could buy meat and fish and poultry and all different kinds of other things. So restaurants weren't that prevalent. But the Italian immigrants, and this is not a slight, this is just facts, they could not read, they could not write, they could barely speak their own language. But the one thing that they did do very well was they were super hard workers. What ended up happening, they went to work at the factories, and many of them built bread ovens in their backyards. And they started making Italian bread, pastries, and the big thing that they started making is pizza. So they would take all those things that they made and they would go back to the places that they worked at and they would sell them because all those products were cheap and a lot of the people didn't have a lot of money. So what ended up happening, a bunch of bakeries started popping up in New Haven, Connecticut, primarily selling the usual stuff that an Italian bakery would sell, which is Italian bread, rolls, cannolis, pastries, foidel, cakes. And as a side dish, as I call it, they would sell pizza. Roughly mid-1900s, the first pizzeria started in New Haven that exclusively sold just pizza. So to answer your question, the ah-beetz, or the term ah-beetz, A-P-I-Z-Z-A, came from the Italian word la pizza. And what they did was they took the L off because it was easier to pronounce ah-beetz. It's really A''P-I-Z-Z-A. I've even saw pictures of signs out in front of pizzerias that actually spelled it ah-beetz, A-R/B-E-E-T-Z. So it kind of was all over the place, but that's where it came from.
ah-beetz, was that because people were saying ah-beetz too fast and they thought there was an R there?
The ah-beetz, I've only seen it once in one picture, and I have probably hundreds of pictures. This was a pizzeria called Appicella's, which is now called Apps. It's actually still around, but they just shortened the name. Honestly, what I think, and I don't have any proof of this, although I don't know how you could get proof, is that they just didn't know how to spell ah-beetz, and they spelled it A-R/B-E-T-Z. That would be my guess, and I probably would bet my left hand on it.
Can you break it down for me? What makes ah-beetz ah-beetz? You had mentioned earlier bread flour, you use some salt, you use some water. I'm guessing you use yeast. What kind of yeast do you use?
So for my class, I use IDY, but the old school Worcester Street, and for people that don't know Worcester Street is kind of like Little Italy in New York, Arthur Avenue. It's the street that has two very, very, very famous pizzerias. One is Sally's ah-beetz, the other is Frank Pepe. And then next to Frank Pepe is this, as old as both of them, Libby's Desserts. They sell cannolis, schwoidels, Italian ice, all that kind of good stuff. So anyways, that street really is the premier place in Connecticut for most people that go. And the one thing about both of those places is that they have the original coal bread ovens installed from day one.
So a traditional style would be made in a coal oven.
Well, yes and no. I could talk your ear off about this, but I'm going to try to keep it brief. When the Italians first came over, coal ovens, or they didn't have gas ovens or electric ovens for pizza. The thing that's more popular is deck ovens, which are those aluminum-faced ovens that are probably in 95% of every pizzeria that is in the United States and probably the world. So here's the thing, and this is what people get really off the rails on a little bit. There's only about 5 or 6 true coal ovens in Connecticut. 2 on Worcester Street, Sally's and Pepe's. 95% of all New Haven pizza that is baked in 2023 is pretty much baked in a deck oven. So the technical answer is, back in the day, it was a coal oven. What a lot of people don't realize is that even though an oven can go to 900, 1,000 degrees, New Haven pizza is usually baked between 600 and 650 degrees.
Even today.
Really what makes New Haven pizza, a lot of the places that all had coal ovens, as they got older and they actually collapsed, the deck ovens started coming out late 40s, early 50s, so they just replaced the coal ovens with the deck ovens. But what makes New Haven pizza, it's a thin crust and it's got fresh milled Italian, I'll call it whole tomatoes, oregano, mozzarella, and the big distinguishing factor is that we brown our mozzarella. And also the other thing is that and a lot of people call it burnt, but there's a char all around the edge of the pie. And even sometimes in the middle, on top of the crust, on the bottom of the crust. And then underneath, there's what we call leoparding, which are these black, either spots or stripes. The combination of all those things, and it's whole milk, mozzarella, and pecorino romano, and olive oil, that combination really is what sets us apart. New York style is actually kind of similar to New Haven style, except generally speaking, it's a lot more, I'll call it generic, meaning that the cheese is just baked. It's still white. A New Haven pie, you're never going to see white mozzarella on top, and it's not thick, and the slices are not these big monstrous slices. What a lot of people don't realize is New Haven pizza generally is sold by the slice. Not that you can't go to a pizzeria in New York and buy a pie, because you certainly can. But generally speaking, especially Manhattan, the 5 boroughs, it's all slice shops. There's no slice shops, or very few, that are in Connecticut.
In terms of hydration, what is the hydration on your average or typical recipe?
I'll say 68 to 70. It's a very wet dough.
I've been to New Haven. I've been to Worcester Street. Am I saying that right? Hopefully. Worcester.
You're close.
Worcester Street.
Yeah,
Thank
Worcester.
you. Worcester. I've been to Worcester Street. I've had the ah-beetz. And I don't know, I was reading a bunch of recipes online and they were all over the place.
Yeah.
I just needed that clarification because I was like, it has to have a bit of a higher hydration.
Yes. The actual recipe is fairly similar to Neapolitan, but just different flour, which kind of makes sense because the Italian immigrants that came over made Neapolitan pizza. They couldn't get the flour that they used over in Italy, so they used bread flour because they were baking Italian bread. So it all kind of makes sense.
What is the dough size and dough weight?
The recipe I have online, and I call it a schmedium.
Schmedium.
So it's kind of a little bit between a small and a medium. So My recipe is 900 grams total, 300 gram dough balls. And that makes an 11 to 13-inch pizza, which is perfect for either the 12 or 16-inch model of the uni. Now, the other thing I tell people, and it's more for the 12-inch, is if you take my recipe and it's obviously 900 total grams and you divide it by 4, that's probably closer to what you want to use for the 12-inch uni models. For a large, Sally's, Pepe's, Modern, whatever, you're probably looking at about 425 grams-ish, which is pretty close to a pound, which is pretty standard in the large pizza world. And that's going to make a 16 to 18-inch pizza. And because we have really thin crust, you'll probably be more in that 17, 18-inch zone with something like that. A 425 gram dough ball.
What does the fermentation look like? Is it 1 day, 2 days, 5 days?
All right, so every pizzeria is different, but most pizzerias, either it's an overnight or they literally come in at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, make a batch of dough. Some of them let it rise, some of them don't, but at the end of the day, it gets balled and used for service at 12, 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock, depending on what time they open. Now, what I tell people is I think 3 days is a sweet spot for New Haven style, just because I think it's got the best taste at that point and the biggest rise. A lot of pizzerias are small. They don't have, I don't think that they don't ferment it longer than a day because they don't want to, but they don't have the space to put all the doughs to do that. Now,
makes sense.
Obviously, Pepe's is a little bit different because they have added on and taken over, and so they've got a little bit more space than most people. But if you go in the Sally's, I mean, it's a freaking shoebox. 10, 12 tables. There's the back. It's a rectangular box, and there's not a lot of room at all in there.
Bake time. How long is the bake time?
4 to 6.
For 6 minutes at 650.
Yeah, some a little longer, some a little shorter. On a busy Friday night when they're just banging out those pizzas and the floor heat just drops, there's only so much that they're going, it takes a little bit longer when they're busy.
I've seen your video tutorials on how to bake this at home, which is great. A very kind of like what you said. It's kind of like how you bake a quote unquote Neapolitan at home where it's not really a Neapolitan. And I'm guessing it's not really an ah-beetz when you bake it in your home oven. You can get close, but it's not like the full experience. What I haven't seen on your YouTube, and I don't know if it's there, maybe I just didn't get to research you enough, but you did mention that you teach it on the uni. Can you get a pretty good bake using uni?
Absolutely. So yeah, I have not made an uni New Haven pizza video yet. it's on my list of to do with about 100 other things. So the trick to making New Haven pizza in an uni, let me backtrack. So uni, fantastic oven. I have one. And what a lot of people don't realize, and I've taught a lot of people this in the last 7 months, is, they read the instructions or the directions that come with the manual, and it tells them to be up at 850 or 900 degrees. But what they don't realize, and this is what we started talking about when I first got on, was that that's for Neapolitan. That oven primarily is a Neapolitan pizza oven. But with a couple tweaks, you can actually make an incredible New Haven style pizza with it. And those tweaks are real simple. Obviously, there's a couple different models. There's an L-shaped burner on some of them.
Coda 16.
Yep. Mm-hmm. The Karu or I always pronounce it wrong.
Karu.
Yeah, something like that. The burner's in the back. So I will say the uni approved bake style is whether you have the L-shaped burner or the burner that's in the back, heat up the stone using your IR thermometer. This is critical that you use that and not the thermometer that comes with it, because the heat of the stone bakes the pizza. Get that stone to about 700 degrees, front and back. The back's always going to be hotter than the front. A lot of people forget that. And what I tell people is, as soon as you launch your pizza, New Haven style, shut the gas off. Let it sit in there, let it set, which means let the dough get hard or movable. And then after about 2 or 3 minutes, turn it 180 degrees, because you want to make sure the heat in the back's going to be always hotter than the heat in the front. So do a couple turns. Make sure that you check the undercarriage, that it's not burnt. And this is the big key. The last minute or two, again, New Haven style, turn the burner back on for a minute or two. And that'll get that final char bake for New Haven style.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. How long is the bake time generally?
Probably a little bit longer in that oven. I would say 6 to 8 minutes.
It's always eyeball anyway. I always eyeball my things. Except
100%.
For the IR thermometer. That's, you got to have that.
Have to. It's a given.
Frank, I want to ask you my final 2 questions before we wrap up here. You've been so great. I hope to have you on again sometime, because you're a wealth of knowledge.
Anytime, my friend, anytime. Like I said, I could talk.
We'll try to carve out a little bit more time too, so you can get deeper in this in the weeds.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for tuning into the What's Good Dough podcast. This one is actually part 1 of a 2-part series with Frank Zabski. Do check out part 2, which is out now. And while you're at it, check out our socials on Instagram at What's Good Dough and our website, what'sgooddough.com. I appreciate you for listening. I love you. Till next time. Peace.